Alright, and welcome to Properties of Chords. So our first question should be this: what in the world is a chord? And just note that that H is silent. So chord is any line segment, let's be very careful here, any line segment inside a circle not passing through the center. I'll say it one more time. A chord, any line segment inside a circle not passing through the center. So if it's inside the circle and it passes through the center, it's technically a diameter. But if it's not passing through the center, it is a chord. So notice here in this circle, the center would be roughly somewhere right there. And so obviously both this line and that line are going to be chords. I would encourage you to pause the video, write down this definition, and let's move on to our rule for two chords. Okay, here's going to be our rule of chords. Part 1 times part 2 is equal to part 1 times part 2. Now notice I did this in different colors because I want to really illustrate something. Part 1 times part 2, well, this is from chord number 1, and over here this is from chord number 2. Okay, so what do I mean by this? Well, let's really break this down. Guys, once you get this, this is one of the easier concepts in our geometry involving circles. So, you'll notice that these two lines intersect here at this point, J. And if I were to say, hey, here is part 1 of my first chord, I could say it is G, J. And I'm going to multiply this by part 2 of this same chord. Here's part 2, J, H. So we're saying that GJ times JH must be equal to, let's kind of switch it up here. Here's our second chord, but here's the first part of our second chord. IJ times, and here's the second part, JF. Okay. Now what would this look like to put numbers to it? Well, I know that part 1 GJ is going to be 5 inches long times, and wait a second, we want to find IF. Let's see, IF. Oh, I'm sorry. It says given IF, I should have paid attention to this. Given IF bisects GH, well guys, that means that JH must also be 5. So we have 5 times 5 will be equal to, and IJ, this first part right here, is 3.2. And we don't know JF, so I'm going to put an X right there. So times X. Okay. Well, over here on the left, what's 5 times 5? Well, that's 25. Is equal to 3.2x. And now we're just doing simple algebra. We'll divide both sides by 3.2. We'll divide both sides by 3.2. And 25 divided by 3.2 will actually give us 7.8. So I'd say, you know what? X is equal to 7.8. Okay, and that's 7.8. Now notice though, find the length of IF. Is this IF? No, that's JF. Notice IF is the whole thing, and so in finding the whole thing, we'll have to do 7.8 plus this first part, 3.2, and 7.8 plus 3.2 will give us roughly, 11 even. Alright, and so it turns out IF is 11 inches even. Okay, let's move on to a second example. Okay, here in example 2, given the circle and chords below, find the length of GH. Let's see. So GH, I want y'all to notice something. It's the whole thing. So we want to find the length of GH. When given IJ is 5x minus 6, JF is 17, GJ is 3x minus 2, and JH is 20 inches. So we have these 4 pieces of information. Now, let's go ahead and start breaking down our parts. we see here ij is this very first part of the very first chord times, and the second part of that same chord will be jf. Now we're going to set this equal to, let's use a different color here. For our different chord, we have gj times jh. So guys, remember, the rule that you want to keep in your head is that part times part is equal to part times part. Now let's fill in all the information that we know. For ij, I see ij is right here, so that must be parentheses 5x minus 6. Now times jf, notice jf is 17. I'm actually going to write that on the outside to make this look a little bit easier. Okay, over here I see gj. Let's see, gj is an expression as well, so that's 3x minus 2 times jh, which is 20, and of course I wrote it like that. Now guys, from here you are going to have to distribute, and I would say this is probably the most difficult version of the problem that you'll ever kind of wind up into. So 17 times 5 will give us 85x. 17 times negative 6, let's see, 17 times 6 is 102. This will equal 2. 20 times 3 is, of course, 60x. And 20 times 2 is negative 40. Now from here, let's go ahead and just do some simple algebra. We know when we have x's on both sides, we'll move the smaller x. So minus 60x, minus 60x. And 85 minus 60x will be 25x. Minus 102 is equal to negative 40. Well, of course, we get rid of our subtraction. We'll add 102 to both sides. And now we have 25x is equal to 62. Now from here, we're going to divide both sides by 25. And let's see what we get for x. 62 divided by 25. By the way, let me write this just a little bit larger for you. 62 divided by 25 will give us 2.48. Now notice, guys, as always, x is not the answer. We were searching for this line right here, GH. So what are we going to have to do? Well, we're going to have to plug x into GJ, this part right here, into that 3 parentheses, 3x minus 2. And then not only that, we're going to have to also add on the other part, JH, which is 20. Okay, so let's plug in that 2.48 and see what we get. Okay, 3 times 2.48 will be 7.44 minus 2 plus 20. Now 7.44 minus 2 is 5 here, let's bring this up here. That's going to be 5.44 plus 20. So remember, JH, this was 20, and we're saying, hey, this part is 5.44. And to get that whole thing, we add them and we get, it's 25.44 inches long for GH. Or, to kind of put in right here, we would say that that whole line has a length of 25.44 inches. Alright, I hope these two examples helped, and I'll catch y'all in our next lesson.